Hello. We're going to be doing page 4 of our chapter 12 notes today. And this is just a continuation from the previous video. Numbers 4 and 5 are similar to the questions that we had on page 3. The difference is that angle A in question number 4 is a quadrant 2 angle, and angle B is a quadrant 1 angle. So what we're going to do here is we're going to sketch angle A and angle B just like we did on the previous questions, but we also have to consider the all students take chemistry, which means some of these trig values are going to be negative. So what we have is angle A, which has nothing at all to do with angle B. So angle A, they say, is in quadrant 2. So I'm just going to sketch a quadrant 2 angle, or a triangle, a right triangle here. Let's call it A. And they tell us that the sine of A is 5/13. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse from SOHCAHTOA. So the opposite side is 5 and the hypotenuse is 13. And then we go through A squared plus B squared equals C squared to figure out what this length B is down here. So 25 plus B squared equals 169. And when you subtract 25 from each side, you get B squared equals 144. So B is the plus or minus square root of 144. Well, in this problem, which is plus or minus 12, so this problem, because A is going, or this side is going backwards on the x-axis, we're going to choose the negative square root of 144, which is negative 12. So this is a 5, 12, 13 triangle, but this negative over here. So there's angle A. Now angle B is totally different. Angle B is in quadrant 1. Even if they were both in quadrant 2, you'd have to draw two separate right triangles. So let's draw angle B in quadrant 1, or triangle B, with this angle down here. And they say the sine of B is 5/13. So we have 5 over 13, just like before. And we don't have to go through Pythagorean theorem again. We know that this missing side is a 12. This is a 5, 12, 13 right triangle. Well, they want us to find the tangent of A plus B. Well, let's see what that tangent formula is for A plus B. It's on the other page. So we have tan A plus tan B over 1 minus tan A tan B. So what we have to know in this particular problem is we have to know what is the tangent of A and what is the tangent of B. Well, SOHCAHTOA says tangent is opposite over adjacent, so the tangent of A is equal to 5 over negative 12. And over here, angle B, the tangent of angle B is opposite over adjacent, which is positive 5/12. So you write those two down, and those are the only two things we need to know for this tangent of A plus B equation. So now we're just going to plug in tangent of A is 5 over negative 12. Tangent of B is 5 over 12. And then we have 1 minus tangent of A, 5 over negative 12, times 5 over positive 12. So when we fill this in, what we have is negative 5/12 plus 5/12, and when you add those together, you get 0. And in the denominator, it really doesn't matter what the denominator is, because 0 over anything is going to be 0, but we'll just, for completeness, call this 1 minus a negative is plus 25 or 144, and so that is equal to 0. So in this particular case, the tangent of A plus B is equal to 0, and that's your final answer. Let's move on to number 5. Now we have an angle that's in quadrant 3. So let's sketch a triangle into quadrant 3, start at the origin, go down into quadrant 3, and drop the perpendicular to the x-axis. So there's angle A. And it says the sine is negative 12/13. So the opposite side is negative 12. Remember, the hypotenuse is always positive. So we have negative 12/13. Well, we have again a 5, 12, 13 triangle, and because we're going backwards on the x-axis, this is a negative 5 going back here. Now we have an angle B. Angle B is in quadrant 2. So let's draw a quadrant 2 triangle. And they tell us the sine is 4/5, opposite over hypotenuse. So this, I hope you recognize this as being a 3, 4, 5 triangle. So this side over here is negative 3 because it's going backwards on the x-axis. Well, they want us to find the cosine of A minus B. So if you look back at the formula for the cosine of A minus B, it's cosine A cosine B plus sine A sine B. So we'll write that out. The cosine of A minus B is the cosine A cosine B plus the sine of A times the sine of B. So what do we have to know here? We have to know what the cosine of A is. Well, we haven't written it down yet. We know the sine of A is negative 12/13. So now we have to do SOHCAHTOA on cosine of A. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's negative 5/13. It's negative because all students take chemistry says that cosine goes negative in quadrant 3. So now we can fill in the cosine of A as negative 5/13. The cosine of B, well, we haven't written that one down yet either. The cosine of angle B, it should be negative because all students take chemistry tells us cosine goes negative. And we can see that because it's adjacent over hypotenuse, which is negative 3/5. So we have cosine of A times the cosine of B plus the sine of A that was told to us in the beginning, negative 12/13, times the sine of B that they told us was 4/5. So now it's just a matter of multiplying here. Negative 5 times negative 3 is positive 15. 13 times 5 is 65. And negative times a positive is a negative. 12 times 4 is 48 over, again, we have a denominator of 65. And 15 minus 48, I think that would be a negative 33 over 65. If you want to use your calculator for any of this, that's fine. And you don't even need the fraction button. You can just, I'll show you 15 over 65, because there's only one thing in the numerator and one thing in the denominator, minus 48 over 65. But if you like to use the fraction button, that's okay too. And I want to do a math frac to get my answer in fraction form. So there's your negative 33 over 65 that we got by hand. The next problem is a backwards problem. So what we have here is we have a cosine of something times a cosine of another thing plus the sine of something times the sine of another thing. And they want to know what is it equivalent to, which one of these multiple choices. Well, what we can do is work backwards from what we have as our formula. What we should do is we should recognize that the cosine of something times the cosine of something else, we can actually fill in the 30 degrees as maybe a letter A in both parts. So we'll just say this is the cosine of A, and A is 30, times the cosine, well, let's let 12 be our B. So now we have cosine A cosine B plus sine A sine B. And hopefully you can recognize that as this formula right here. It just so happens to be the formula above it. That is, this formula is equal to, and we're just going backwards on our formula sheet, this is the same thing as the cosine of A minus B. right? Instead of going this way, we're coming back this way. Well, we let A equal 30, and we let B equal 12. And so now all we have to do is fill in the A equals 30. So we have the cosine of 30 minus 12. And 30 minus 12 is equal to 18. So this is actually the same thing as the cosine of 18 degrees. So that's just a going the other way on this cosine, the difference of two angles, the cosine of A minus B, and we're just letting A be 30 and B be 12. So cosine of 18 would be this answer, which is answer B, just a multiple choice. You could actually put this in your calculator if you wanted to and try to match it up, but what we really should do is recognize this as one of the formulas that we've learned in this chapter. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to expand out the cosine of pi minus x. And so this is the cosine of A minus B if we let A equal pi and B equal x. So let's do the cosine of A minus B, and that's the formula that we've used a couple times already. That's the cosine of A times the cosine of B plus the sine of A times the sine of B. But we're going to let A be equal to pi and B be equal to x, so we'll just substitute that. So the cosine of pi minus x is equal to the cosine of pi times the cosine of x plus the sine of pi times the sine of x. Well, pi we're going to substitute in as 180 degrees because it's just a little bit easier for us to work with 180 degrees. So pi radians equals 180 degrees. And if our calculator is in degrees mode, we can actually just figure out what the cosine of 180 is from our calculator, because it's not going to be a radical. It's -1. So we have -1 times the cosine of x, which we don't know what that is. And then the sine of 180, we can ask our calculator if we want. That's equal to 0. So we have plus 0 times the sine of x. Well, 0 times anything is just 0. -1 times the cosine of x, plus, is equal to negative cosine of x. And negative cosine of x plus 0 is just equal to negative cosine of x. And that's the end of page 4. I'll see you tomorrow.